You know exactly who I'm thinking of. Stick him up there. Is that Spider Monkey? We're back checking out the history of Monster Hunter Frontier by SuperRAD. Last time around, we checked out the first two parts, talking about the season's era of Frontier. Now it's time to see what happens in the forward part.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode in the history of the Monster Hunter Frontier series.
Also, what was that in the background? Okay, I'm guessing that's an event. I know Frontier had some crazy crossover event monsters, but what is going on there?
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode in the history of the Monster Hunter Frontier series. Today we'll be looking at all of the forward updates from Forward 1 to Forward 5. We're officially done with all 10 of this season's updates, and you'll start to see not only more hardcore...
I've seen this guy before. I remember seeing this guy on an art somewhere.
monsters, but the inclusion of additional flagship monsters and various other features as well. The design of some of these monsters are so incredibly unique, and I hope you're as eager to watch it as I am to show it to you. The previous two videos have been receiving a lot of positive reception. It makes me really happy to see more people willing to take a look at Monster Hunter Frontier and what they may have missed, instead of excluding it simply due to the fact that it's not mainline.
One of you guys brought up this crab in a previous video talking about ones you'd like to see come back in mainline Monster Hunter. And yeah, I did really enjoy the first two videos. So far, maybe it's just perception shifting over time. Maybe it's just the first couple monsters we saw from Frontier were more reasonable. But so far, everything I've seen is things I could see coming back to mainline Monster Hunter. Let's see if this one continues that.
Always been so many rumors and discussion from Western Monster Hunter players, and honestly, this game has gotten an unjustifiably negative reception in my opinion. So far...
Okay, so I think I covered this previously. I'd never thought what I saw of Frontier looked bad. It's just it didn't feel Monster Hunter to me. But again, at least the first, most of what was covered in the first two videos, I could see being brought back to mainline Monster Hunter. There was a lot of interesting stuff in those, so gotta stop pausing immediately.
Everything I have seen and experienced has been truly phenomenal when it comes to the design of a Monster Hunter entry, and the sheer amount of content offered, even by this point in the series, is pretty nuts. I honestly can't believe we have never gotten to experience...
No, they did not make Silver and Gold Levisioth. Oh, why would you do that? Really? There's a Silver and Gold Levisioth.
And some of this content within the main releases, and here's hoping to the future with the announcement of Monster Hunter Rise that will see Capcom a little more receptive to the...
Oh, this was made before Rise? Okay.
The idea of bringing over some Frontier monsters together,
which they ultimately did with Espinos. God, Espinos.
We're going to look at the development of Monster Hunter Frontier, from its initial inception to release to the updates and expansions created for it. We'll dive into the features of the series and try to compare the gameplay to gameplay of mainline titles. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with how intricate and interesting this game's combat was.
Again, some of what they talked about in the first two were some really cool mechanics, like the length of your weapon's model. There were weapons with different lengths that actually reflected the length hitbox of various weapons. My tracking is messing up because I put my hand in front of my face. But that was cool. There was a monster that apparently had it would hold in place, and then if you attacked it while it was holding, it would do a counterattack on you. That was pretty cool. Some other stuff like that that was pretty neat.
Think old school Monster Hunter on crack. It's pretty wild, and I'm excited to show it to you. Future videos will focus...
Okay, it's pretty wild, but would you guys say it's wild? That sounded more like a Z than an S.
Focus on the G1 to G10 updates and finally the Z to Zenith releases. If you haven't watched my previous videos on the history of the series, I suggest you do so now. Additionally, if you enjoy these videos and want to help support the channel, please consider liking the video and subscribing.
And I will give you the like. You have until the end of the series to see if I will subscribe.
Just takes a couple of seconds and really helps boost the reach of the video to Monster Hunter fans everywhere. Today, I'm
Also, didn't do this last time, but since this is the requesting the like and subscribe portion of the video, I figure I should do the same. Hit the YouTube buttons, except for hype. I don't think I'm eligible to be hyped yet, but hit the other ones. You've heard enough people ask about it. You know what ones I'm talking about.
joined with Sarah Symmetry, who has been a large help in the creation of the Frontier history videos. I'll be leaving all of their links in the description, so if you have time, be sure to check out their YouTube channel.
And I will be linking this playlist in this video's description too. So if you want to check out these videos on your own, maybe because I talked over something and you wanted to see it, or if you just want to check it out on your own, go do so.
SuperRAD, and today I'm here to bring you a brief history of Monster Hunter Frontier.
Let's see.
Forward 1 was released April 20th, 2011 and marked the 4th anniversary of the series. One of the first big changes was renovations to various parts of Mesoporta Square. In the first video in the Frontier History series, it was mentioned that all of the footage in the square wouldn't be shown, and that's because it's hard to show all of those changes over time. Instead, on the final history video, we'll take a look at what you would consider the finished product for this game's hub area. In the meantime,
I am curious as to what the end hub looks like after all the talking about in the first one.
let's take a look at some of the other features introduced. We're going to get right into the monsters with this one, but starting with Rucodiora, a brand new Elder Dragon to be introduced into the series and the first Frontier exclusive Elder Dragon to be seen. Naturally, the developers wanted to create a truly unique experience with his inclusions, giving it the brand new magnetism ailment. If inflicted, Rucodiora had the ability to pull in or repel hunters at will. It can also summon a levitating rock that will circle around it for a limited period of time. For some
before Wilds, I might have said something about that being absurd. But after Wilds, and after all the craziness with the Ice Shard Cliffs and the Ancient Civ magnet tech, I could honestly see him coming back, just from that description, Rucodiora coming back in the Ice Shard Cliffs. I think that might be really cool, actually. Let's check him out a bit more, though.
For some reason, this monster isn't properly affected by the paralysis ailment, and whilst it can be inflicted, Rucodiora can still move around. It has multiple other moves, including generic claw attacks and dragon element magnetic sweeping beams. It's incredibly original in not only its actions and ailments, but also in its design, featuring bright yellow wings with an orange gradient and large horns which can be broken up to 3 times.
Multi-part brick. Yeah, again, this design, Rucodiora, I like it. Still, I guess we're before the Frontier designs I have seen that I didn't like still, because I like this one. I think
Brand new,
and I think it would work really well in Wilds. Maybe the Ice Shard, maybe partially coming into the Ice Shard and going to other areas from it. I actually think that could work pretty interestingly.
Area known as the Interceptor's Base, which is similar in design to the town area from Monster Hunter DOS. Many parts of the area are destructible, and as they fall apart, the scenery of the area will change with it, with areas becoming engulfed in flames, as well as the surrounding air beginning to spark. Next,
That's really cool. I mean, I was about to say I wish we had more dynamic maps, but Wild's whole deal with the maps is that they're dynamic. So, but having a fortress type map that's fallow inclemency thing is the map getting destroyed and rebuilt. I don't know. That kind of that seems like it has potential. Not sure much more than the vague idea of that, but it could be cool.
on the monster list is Violent Raviente. Since the monster is still unclassified, it's not really considered to fall under any proper subspecies-esque classification. That being said, you could think of it as a sort of variant. The color...
Well, is it? So... Well, obviously it's a variant of Leviante, but... Is it a subspecies, rare species, variant, or deviant? because those are important terms that have different things, mean different things. Subspecies are just that, a subspecies of the monster. Or, in Red Kezu's case, the actual species, with Kezu being the subspecies, but semantics there, a little bit. For the most part, well, it gets wibbly with the oldest subspecies to not, because subspecies used to just be the it's different thing for monsters, but as the series expanded, more lore was thought into. Subspecies, for the most part, are actually subspecies. At least I think 3rd gen and on, it is truly a subspecies, not a monster that is just different. You know, for example, a good example of that would, and actually, some of the subspecies that are carryovers from that should honestly be reclassified as variants. For example, Black Diablos. Black Diablos is a lot more of a variant than a subspecies, because it is just a female Diablos in rut. Same with the breeding season Hypnocatrice, it talked about in the last 2 videos. Don't remember if that was the first or second one, but because we checked them out at the same time. Those are more what variants are. Whereas things like Glacial Ignactor is a subspecies, or Tidal Negerola. I don't know why those are the 2 my brain went to, but they are a different line of monsters that has different physiological traits. I'm going to go more recent. Coral Pookie Pookie. As some Pookie Pookie navigated to the Coral Highlands. Took me a second to remember the name of the place, and over time they changed and variated. But they are a subspecies. They're not regular Pookie Pookie changed by directly changed, but a line of Pookie Pookie that have changed to better fit the environment. Rare species are just extremely rare subspecies. Prime examples of that being Silver and Gold Rathian. Or Abyssal Lagiacrus. And a couple other subspecies, air quotes, that only appear in Master Rank, like, say, one I thought could come back in Wilds, Copper Blangonga. Variants are monsters that have changed from repeatable environmental stressors. They're not a monster that is a subspecies. It's not this line of monsters has changed to fit the environment. They're a something has happened to this monster to make it different, but in a repeatable way. Right? So, what's a good Scarred Yangaruga. Scarred Yangaruga is a fairly common variant. It's a Yangaruga that's essentially just super tempered. It got beat up in a bunch of fights, it learned, it got stronger. What's another one? Trying to think of a different one, but it's not clicking in my head, except for the one I made for Odogaron a long time ago. But variants are monsters that have changed because of a stressor it placed on that specific monster in a way that's repeatable. I think, technically, Furious Rajang. I think it's usually, again, because it was older introduced, I think it's technically classified as a subspecies, but it's a variant because it's a Rajang that had its tail cut off, got even more furious. That's typically what happens with Rajang. A deviant is a one-off instance, an extremely rare occurrence where a monster, through similar process to being a variant, has been altered, but it's whereas a variant might be 1 in a million or 1 in a couple thousand that this could happen if this thing happens to this monster. A deviant is more like 1 in a million or 1 in 10 million. If you kill every other Diablos in a Diablos' herd and leave it heavily crippled, but don't kill it because you're a horrible poacher, 9 million, 99, 9 million, 9,000, so on, % of the time, you're just going to end up with a dead or crippled Diablos. That 1% time, you end up with Bloodbath Diablos. So, careful with your word choice. Is the point that I'm very poorly and long-winding about it. Though, just from looking at it, I would guess that this is a subspecies of Laviente. And now we're somewhat back on track, and let's continue Sorry for that.
The scheme of the monster has changed, with green and ivory white taking over the predominantly orange and brown. It also comes equipped with new abilities as well, such as the new Flame Breath attack that can heat up areas of the map to the point that they cause damage, can also blind the player's vision by creating smoke around the map, and will use this as an opportunity to try and inhale or attack hunters. This change from your typical Raviente to its violent alternative is said to be due to starvation, making the monster more aggressive and ready to prey on whatever is in its
And I was immediately corrected. This is a variant, as he originally said. So he did mean it in that sense, or coincidentally, it aligned.
path. Moving on is a unique flying wyvern similar in design.
Oh, this is the frontierist monster, a frontier monster. I've seen this guy. Unknown. Edgy donut steel Rathian.
Designed to a Rathian with a dark black and bright red color scheme.
I'm the world's ultimate radical.
Similar to Deviljho,
Exactly.
Unknown Black Flying Wyvern would invade players' hunts and come equipped with a slew of cool features, including multiple rage states. In its first phase, the monster will simply huff black smoke whilst attacking the player, but soon after will begin spouting blue and yellow flames. Finally, in its final state, Unknown's eyes will turn a bright red and the membrane on its wings will begin to have a red flame-like pattern displayed. As the monster gets angrier and transitions through these states, it will get both faster and stronger. It seems to have the ability to create both large spheres and beams of fire, and can
Having multiple levels of an enraged state is actually pretty cool. Now, Unknown is very much the the edge of Monster Hunter. Brain not braining today. I am sorry. Unknown is very much the Shadow the Hedgehog. OC Donut Steel Rathian, and I don't know about it coming back, but a monster with multiple levels of enrage actually sounds pretty interesting.
throw the claws on its wings at hunters as projectiles, which will then regenerate. Truly.
Did they get the idea for Nergigante from Unknown? Regenerating spikes that it uses as disposable weapons. That sounds like a mixture of Nergigante and Saragios. Huh. I wonder if they actually drew inspiration from Unknown then.
The
Ultimate life form.
New hardcore monsters include hardcore breeding season Hypnocatries, which comes with more
that title might get me a little bit of issue with YouTube. It is a monster in a video game. Please do not attack my channel for that, because that sounds like something else. Sounds like a title of a particular subset of Monster Hunter art.
vibrant feathers and a more aggressive demeanor. Two of the feathers creating its crest seem to be enlarged. It's incredibly erratic and now has the ability to KO hunters by releasing a pink gas underneath it. Hardcore.
Oh, wait, back up.
Its crest seem to be enlarged. It's incredibly erratic and now has the ability to KO hunters by releasing a pink gas underneath.
Oh, knockout stun. Okay. For half a second, I thought he meant this gas just instantly carts you, and I'd have been like, what? But it's just a stun, which makes sense for a variation of Hypnocatries to have, evolved from Sleep Sack. Yeah.
It. Hardcore Camu and Nono Origarin. Camu and Nono hit the gym and came back with increased muscle mass as well as various changes to facial features, such as their blue eyes, a typical change in some of the hardcore releases. They're faster and stronger than before, and their wind attacks are now considered Dragon Wind strength. Post SR100, these monsters can enter a super rage state when their partner is slayed, making them even faster and stronger than their upgrades had already made them. These new rage states also unlock additional attacks for each. Hardcore.
That is actually, again, very interesting mechanic that could see returned either with them or some new monsters or older monsters that operate in pairs.
Kushala Daora, which sports a brighter, almost white body, similar to when it sheds in the Monster Hunter Dose cutscenes.
I didn't even have a chance to pause and say that before he said it. Which, by the way, the Kushala shedding ecology cutscene that you unlock is one of my favorite old Monster Hunter cutscenes. Not top, but it's up there because it is, again, shows you that these animals exist beyond just what we see them as. you know? And that's one of my favorite things about the franchise. Again, that these feel like real animals in the world. They're not just, crazy monster because magic. They exist as part of the world and the ecosystem. They are a part of the circle of life, if you want to get Lion King about it.
Can
And I
now
really
inflict
like that.
defense down and can create ice crystals along the ground when roaring, which will
Wonder if that's why they gave Kushala hidden ice and world.
not inflict any ailments, but will prevent the hunter from healing their red bar health over time. Hardcore pink Rathian, with larger spikes and a purple hue on parts of its body, as well as odd symbols and designs on the membrane of its wings.
Well, those are just the symbols that some variations of Rathian have. Like some versions of Rathalos and Rathian, depending on the game, and probably in lore, like regional variations, have more like ruin-like symbols on their wings, which I actually prefer those versions aesthetically. Like if we took those versions, gave them a new gen tune-up, that would probably be my favorite look for Rathalos and Rathian and their sub-versions.
Gets access to new moves and alternatives to existing ones, such as its tail swing now functioning as a sweeping motion behind it that can poison multiple people. Finally, if Hardcore Kezu wasn't enough for you, the developers of Frontier found it fitting to have the Red Kezu subspecies receive the same upgrade. It can now shoot thunder.
See, again, here's Red Kezu, the one I was talking about from early Monster Hunter, where technically it was classified as a subspecies, but in actuality, Red Kezu is the base Kezu, and White Kezu is the subspecies. It's just more hunters encounter and deal with White Kezu than Red Kezu. Because honestly, regular Kezu should be called White Kezu, be the subspecies, but Red Kezu are stronger, so they got the subspecies moniker. But Red Kezu are actually what Kezu are as a species in general. Normally, White Kezu are a albino subspecies of Kezu. The lore is loring.
Balls in all surrounding directions and drool
Man, talking about Kezu's balls again.
acid, which can inflict the defense down ailment. Now, one of the biggest and arguably most successful features introduced in Frontier within the forward 1.5
duck. There's a duck!
update was the inclusion of the Guku pet that can now be acquired. Think of it as a Poogie, but instead of a pig, it was a miniature duck companion, which would gather bugs and catch fish for you while out on missions. They also had a special cooking pot minigame that allowed players to melt specific items into hardcore carves. If the player failed the minigame, their Guku would get the iconic burned afro hairstyle that you might have seen circulating around the internet. The Guku were obtained by taking part in special duck hunting quests, in which the player would have to steal an egg from a monster and escape with it. Examples would be taking an egg from a Kongalala's tail by breaking it, or from a Tigrex's mouth by forcing it to charge into a wall. Similar to a Tamagotchi, you had to take care of your Guku, otherwise they would become unhappy and may even leave. And
that sounds really fun. And I can very much see why Gukus were extremely popular, so much so that they put one in the water gun in Wilds. That is something that, again, sounds really fun, and I hope we get something similar to that in probably not in Wilds expansion, but whatever comes after Wilds. Having something like that would be, like, I keep saying fun, but fun.
similar to a Pokemon, these pets had random natures which would affect what they gathered for you. If you think about how popular Poogie is within the mainline community, Guku's
and it works as an item gatherer for you too, which makes it even more rewarding to do this beyond just having cute animal companion.
Are equally idolized within Frontier. They quickly became the icon of the series thanks to their cute and customizable design. Now that was a lot to talk about for just one update, so let's now head over to Forward 2 and see what was added.
The flagship of the Forward 2 update, released June 29, 2011, was Gogomoa, a brand new fanged beast and a rather popular addition due to its multiple unique mechanics. It's similar to a primate and will carry its
Wait. That's webbing. Editor me, you know exactly who I'm thinking of. Stick him up there. Is that Spider Monkey?
child, a Kokomoa, on its back. Hunters can actually knock the Kokomoa off to send Gogo here into a blind rage. When in this state, Gogo will become both faster and stronger, but it will also take extra damage when attacked. On top of having the attributes of a primate, it also has the abilities of a spider, having the ability to produce a silk-like substance from its palms that it can use to swing around the map. Finally,
it actually is Spider Monkey.
if Gogo launched itself at hunters from its webbing, players could perform a type of counterattack. If attacked during this animation, players would gain iframes and dodge the attack, while also dealing extra damage to the monster. Gogo
That's really cool. Both the special attack counter thing and just the concept of the monster in general, honestly. But it having a move counter like that's neat.
was the set to work towards as an entry-level player at the time, due to the inclusion of the Evasion Plus 2 skill in its armor set, an ability that became more and more crucial to Frontier as the game progressed in updates and difficulty. Development-wise, Teruki Miyashita became producer of the Frontier series within this point of the game, and was a considerable factor in the design decisions going forward from this point. This is kind of hilariously important for series quests, which were also introduced. Similar to Monster Hunter Portable 3rd, certain quests, when completed, would immediately throw the hunter into another quest, but these could range from hunts to gathering/harvest quests. Now,
That's interesting. That's another very interesting mechanic that I could see brought forward in an interesting way. Hunts that immediately put you straight from the hunt into another one, and this is before they give you infinite restock, so that meant you had to be even more careful and strategic about your item usage. I already went off on the whole rant about my thoughts on infinite item restock in the first one of these, so I won't do that again, but that makes you have to think about a lot of things, which could be very interesting to see return. But of course, it would be undercut if it returned in a game where you have infinite item restock.
I promise I'm not making this up, but one of these special series quests led to a fight against a purple Kokomoa who not only wielded a gun lance, but also had the face of this new producer.
What? That's the thing. That. Oh, okay. So that's what we saw at the very beginning. What? Oh, that is ridiculously goofy, and I love it. But also, it's wielding a gun lance, which that brings up something I have thought of for a long time that would be really awesome, is a fanged beast ape monster that uses discarded hunter equipment. It has like a bundled twine basket on its back that it has a couple lances, a greatsword, maybe a hammer or something, and it uses them because it's learned from watching hunters, and is like, maybe it'd be a variant, maybe it'd be its own new monster, but a fanged beast that uses weapons, not just, fruits and rocks and stuff like, not Ketchawaka. Is it Ketch? No, Ketchawaka is the trumpet one. Rise. Bishattan. Not like Bishattan's natural environmental fruits that it uses, but actual stolen gear, almost like Adel Ka, now that I'm thinking about it, which Adel Ka would be another monster that I'd love to see come back. But yeah, a monster that uses stolen hunter equipment would be awesome.
That's right. The Tide Island also marked its appearance in Forward 2, which was a new hunting area the players could hunt monsters like Gogomoa in. Part of the area would change depending on whether or not it was the day or night and the level of the tide, a form of flash bug that was...
That almost sounds like a wild map. And my thought about having a beach map for the Wilds expansion. I really want a beach map that has underwater combat. That would be very cool, Capcom. Please do it.
Poisonous also inhabited the island and would become aggressive towards hunters if they hit the trees that house. Also marked its appearance in Forward 2, which was a new hunting area the players could hunt monsters like Gogomoa in. Part of the area would change depending on whether or not it was the day or night and the level of the tide. A form of flash bug that was poisonous also inhabited the island and would become aggressive towards hunters if they hit the trees that house their nests.
Poisonous flash bug, huh? Again, pretty neat. Maybe Wilds devs took a little more from Frontier than I thought, because that almost sounds like the hornet traps you can do in Wilds.
Luckily, they could also aggro onto monsters, allowing
Yeah, is that not almost exactly like the Hornet Trap in Wilds? That sounds a lot like the Hornet Trap in Wilds.
the ability to poison them during combat. Hardcore monsters also came with a new mechanic in this iteration. A ticket system was put in place that allowed players to unlock special hidden armor sets. These sets, when worn together, would produce a set bonus that was dependent on the weapon the hunter was currently using. Generally, this would be a damage multiplier, but some were fairly unique, such as the longsword halving spirit gauge consumption, or the greatsword getting an increase to the level 4 charge timeframe. Hardcore
That's kind of neat. But Frontier's already introduced so many, like, this armor does this thing with this specific sword set, and now they're doing that again, but different here. So sounds very similar to previous armors influencing specific weapons that were covered before. Still, I do think that it is overall an interesting concept.
Cantor was one of these new monster editions, and had an unusual blue tint to its hide in comparison to the typical red that we normally see, as well as a length increase to its tusks. It can now summon giant lava pillars and use its roar to damage hunters that are close to it.
Once I actually got somewhat... A Cantor was one of the hardest monsters for me to face in Freedom Unite. It took me longer than pretty much... Actually, I think it legitimately took me longer to successfully hunt a Cantor than any other monster in any other Monster Hunter game, barring the ones I haven't actually done. But once I finally figured out how to hunt a Cantor, I really liked his hunt. And he was a very cool monster. Well, he was a very hot monster because regions, but you know what I mean. The very cool monster in relation is Ukantlos, but I actually never got to unlock Ukantlos. It was the one thing I hadn't actually got in Freedom Unite, I think. Now, there's like a couple quests and unlocking Ukantlos that I never got. And maybe I'll see if I can get the PSP to work without it sounding like it's trying to explode and go for it one day.
Next up was Hardcore Black Diablos, which have the blue eyes you see in multiple other HC monsters, as well as a gigantic left horn. She can create high-level quakes similar...
Hold up. That almost sounds like it was a workshop for Bloodbath Diablos we were talking about a second ago. I guess Frontier really was the workshop of like new ideas to get adapted further into mainline. That's, at least it seems that way.
To other hardcore monsters, and uses this as an opportunity to perform her digging attack, which is now much faster. Hardcore Blue Yan Kutku, who has an incredibly large lower jaw, which you can now use...
I probably should have put this on the list when I was thinking about other monsters to come back to World, but Blue Yan Kutku, because we have Yan Kutku. Not World Wilds, but yeah. Another monster that's probably going to show up in Wilds expansion because we have Yan Kutku. It just makes sense, along with Purple Gypsros.
To lay pitfall traps for hunters to fall into. It's also much faster in the air.
What?
Attack, which is now much faster. Hardcore Blue Yan Kutku, who has an incredibly large lower jaw, which you can now use to lay pitfall traps for hunters.
It can make pitfall traps for hunters? That's actually really cool. And if we bring Blue Yan Kutku back, give him that, because that would make Blue Yan Kutku way more interesting than just being the recolored subspecies. I like that.
To fall into. It's also much faster in the air compared with a traditional Yan Kutku.
Which makes sense because it's the blue one and would be more camouflaged for aerial flying and sky stuff. They thought out what to make Yan Kutku in this, Blue Yan Kutku in this, a lot better, because that's actually, all of that makes perfect sense to give to the Yan Kutku subspecies. I mean, this is the hardcore version of it, so it's stronger, but I like all of that a lot.
Hardcore Bulldrome, who appears older with larger, more developed tusks and a sick mohawk. It can
Okay, so it's hardcore Bulldrome that has the mohawk, not regular in Frontier.
toss chunks of the ground at hunters, but really it's still just a Bulldrome. Nothing too crazy about it. Hardcore Doragyorosu with large claws at the end of
Okay, we did talk about him.
its tendrils, yellow webbing, and golden eyes. It takes moves from the original Berekirosu and is overall more agile. Around this time, a rare version of Dora was also released known as Phantom Doragyorosu, which essentially looked like the hardcore version, but it appears permanently in its rage state. The big thing about this monster is that it revives after death with a large explosion of the dragon element.
It really is the prototype Raydao. Okay, every second or third thing for the last couple minutes in this video has just been me going, and that's where they got the idea from? Because that's Raydao. That's awesome.
And will enter a new tier of rage, becoming stronger and faster in the process, with an upgraded moveset. It was
And again, the multiple levels of rage. I like this.
incredibly rare to engage with, and offered items that were only used as a trophy of your accomplishment. The final hardcore addition in Forward 2 is Hardcore Gravios, which has larger, more developed spikes and muscles. The speed of its sweeping beam maneuver has been improved, and it can be incredibly dangerous if the hunter isn't ready to dodge it. With all the hardcore monsters covered, it's time to move on to Forward 3.
Not too crazy of a change for Gravios.
February 1st, 2012 marked the release of Forward 3 and 2 new monsters, but other than that, there weren't many new features to discuss. First is a brand new brute wyvern known as Abirugu, a fire element monster that could perform sweeping beams and charged short-range explosions. It was also a monster to have a double spinning tail move under its arsenal, but what made it special was that it would somehow ignore the invulnerability effect that's typically on hunters when sent flying due to damage, meaning that
You know, that's what this guy's appearance reminds me of. He looks like... Okay, have you ever seen one of those pictures where someone takes a Pokemon and then draws it to where it's like a Monster Hunter monster? That's what this guy looks like. To me.
they'd still be vulnerable for extra damage. This idea of ignoring iframes would become a regular occurrence in later monster editions within the Frontier series, and hunters would
I don't like that, though. Monsters that ignore your iframes. That just sounds like it's made to make you angry.
have to watch out for this in order to prevent quickly carding. Next up is Tycoon Zamaza, a brand new Carapacean entry. This was another monster that could be found on Tide Island from Forward 2 and took the appearance of a giant crab with a hammer and a scythe for either claw. Its body was covered in a dense coating of dirt, which hunters could break off by attacking individual parts of the body.
This is the guy one of you were telling me about that you wanted to see come back. And solely on the basis of having more crab monsters, I already agree, but let's see what he does beyond have multiple shell layers.
If dirt was broken, Zamaza would smash the floor of the cave, leading the hunter down to a second level. From here, you continued the fight, attempting to remove more dirt from its bright orange shell. Once this had been achieved, the ground would be smashed a second time, leading to the final phase. It was at this last...
He's a full-on, like, multi-stage boss fight? I mean, technically all large monsters are kind of boss fights, but... Okay, I thought he was a lot more mid-tier power level than he seems to be, because this is the kind of hype you give to a late-end monster, and I really like this third level design for him. Hold on.
Stand that the electric blue inner shell of Zamaza was revealed.
He's got is that a drill?
And it could now utilize thunder attacks. This was very difficult to achieve, as you could very easily kill the monster before even progressing past the first area.
Oh. I mean, if they brought him back, they'd shift that, obviously, because there's no way you don't want to see him go all the way down to his final form.
New inclusion was bringing over certain items and abilities from the mainline games, such as throwing knives. Now players have the ability to use these items within Frontier. Unfortunately, there were no new hardcore monster inclusions within this update, so we can move straight on to Forward 4.
I really like this grab, especially because his final form has drill. Might not be one to pierce the heavens with, but I like drill weapons. He's pretty cool looking. New Leviathan. Okay.
Forward 4 released May 23rd, 2012, similar to how Forward 3 bought a new Brute Wyvern.
So this guy does flash weaponry.
Forward 4 introduced a new...
Hold on. Editor me, you're probably going to need to cut this part. Okay, I ended up getting called away for half a day, so let's just get back into this. Let me back it up a touch.
Forward 4 released May 23rd, 2012. Similar to how Forward 3 bought a new Brute Wyvern, Forward 4 introduced a new Leviathan to the MMO, known as Kuaru Sepusu, who was found on the highland where we first fought Gurenzuburu. Its main ability was found on the crystals that covered its body. Kuaru had the ability to amplify sunlight and lightning to stun and shock the hunter, as well as scatter the crystals to create dangerous landmines. One quest involved hunting a pair in the desert, who were able to conduct team attacks, proving a deadly combination.
I feel like this monster would very much benefit from, and if it were to come back, it could be good. I mean, I'd have to see more hunting of it to know about its fight-wise, but appearance-wise, I feel like if it was given a tune-up with higher fidelity graphics, it might feel more Monster Hunter. But at the moment, it's... This one feels a little more into the frontier spikes everywhere in a way that doesn't quite gel with me. But the concept of using its crystals to do the aforementioned is pretty neat, though.
Quest involved hunting a pair in the desert, who were able to conduct team attacks, proving a deadly combination. Speaking of, one of two new hardcore monsters introduced was Gurenzuburu also, with a longer horn and longer spikes over its wings and tail. It has a new AoE attack.
Okay, he definitely looks better in his hardcore version. I like this look of him a lot more than the base form.
Where it smashes
Also, is my
its horn
tracking
into
broken
the ground
again?
and a new charge that
I think my tracking's broken again. Nope. No, okay, it was just being weird for a second.
can inflict stun. In higher ranks, it can also add water element to its normal attacks. Secondly, hardcore Rusted Kushala looks even more rusted than the typical variant. Its main feature is a stronger roar, which required high-grade earplugs to block. Now
Rusted Kushala looks pretty good as a hardcore. They changed its design up nicely.
is the really interesting thing about Forward 4. First of all, Supremacy monsters get introduced in Forward 5, but not before hunters got a taste of what they would be like with a special invasion event featuring Unknown. It could hijack quests hunters were currently taking part in.
Huh.
Now Unknown
I was about to say, what do you mean it could hijack quests? But he's probably about to say that, so...
5, but not before hunters got a taste of what they would be like with a special invasion event featuring Unknown. It could hijack quests hunters were currently taking part in. Now Unknown most likely had a hardcore release at this point, gaining stronger tiers of wind pressure and additional small changes, but the Supremacy species was where it was at. Here's a brief explanation of the Supremacy species. Difficult.
Okay.
Grueling difficult was the design choice for these monsters. They're designed to be as punishing as possible and would really challenge seasoned hunters that wanted to even attempt them. They would have two versions of their hunts. The first was like an introduction to their battle, where if it wasn't completed in time, the monster would essentially be repelled. Except this repel was considered a failed state. The second version was a shortened 20-minute hunt. Let's take a look at Supremacy Unknown now, since it was technically introduced in Season 4. It acts similarly at first to your typical Unknown, and will
That multiple quest almost reminds me of how Elder Dragons were handled in Freedom Unite, or at least some Elder Dragons were handled, where you'd have the hunt to repel and then hunt it fully quests. but having the repel be a fail state. I mean, they are supposed to be the incredibly difficult challenge mode hunt, so it feels a little off to me.
Still transition through multiple rage states, with 6 in total. It borrows moves from monsters like the Espinasse subspecies, but upgraded to be even more challenging. Take the charged fireball move as an example. It will shoot a large fireball into the air that will split into multiple small balls that fall to the ground. However, these projectiles will actually home in on hunters unless they stick close to the monster. In its
No. Why can the fireballs home? Unless there's some explanation that now also has magnet shenanigans, you shouldn't be able to have homing attacks, right? It's one thing to have attacks that have like curving arcs, but unless the attack itself is in some way controlled or animated, which I don't know how this would be, it shouldn't be homing. Because that goes from, okay, this is a dragon that has, through some potentially mystically enhanced but otherwise biological processes, shot fire at you, to, oh, this is using fire magic to direct the fire to hit you. Now we're getting into the this isn't Monster Hunter to me anymore stuff.
Rage mode, a blue aura will surround it, and it has a combo maneuver where it can launch players.
Also, yeah, what is with the blue aura? It's one thing for parts to start glowing red, to go red because, increased blood flow or angry, but random glowing without there being a reason for the glowing, at least to this extent,
into the air by stomping and crushing the ground around it. After this, it roars that causes chaos status. Another example is when it lifts off of the ground, producing...
Was that sleep gas? Why does this... I mean, I know Unknown is supposed to be the edgy donut steel, but why does it have sleep gas? That I can understand having fire poison, even giving it a stun roar, but at least to some extent with that, but where is the sleep coming from?
Wind with enough force that it can kill, then diving down and attacking its targets multiple times, ignoring recovery iframes.
Again, the ignoring recovery frames is... just ignoring iframes in general is not cool.
Hit by this combination is guaranteed instant death. While this monster typically invades quests...
Guaranteed instant death attacks are things that I despise. Especially in Monster Hunter, because it's one thing if it's, okay, there's a setup attack, but you have a chance to dodge, and then if you don't, you get hit. Or like with the grab attacks, where if you spam your knife stab enough, you will get let go, or if someone else flash pause it or something, but guaranteed if you're just winged by this, you die. That's BS.
The Supremacy version would later be selectable as a postable hunt of its own. Okay, so we have our first taste of Supremacy monsters, but as mentioned, they weren't fully introduced until the next update. Let's move on to Forward 5 and see what's in store for us.
Okay, maybe I will hope that they tone it down slightly in Forward 5, but this is Frontier, so they probably won't. Also, my tracking is starting to really wig out. It's probably because of lighting.
Forward 5 released February 6th, 2013, and it would be the final Forward update until the release of the G series. It brought with it a new flagship, 4 new hardcore monsters, and 6 new Supremacy species. Odiba Tarasu is the new flagship and an enormous flying wyvern, despite not actually having the ability to fly.
Well, yeah, but it has the pseudo-flying wyvern bone structure. I didn't see it at first, just looking at it from farther back, but up close like this, yeah, it has the same kind of structure as a Cantor, Cantlos, and, Tigrex and those as well.
inhabited the desert. Seen as a distant relative of a Cantor and Eucanelos,
Yeah,
it
like
attacked with
you
its
just
huge
said it.
size and massive roars, being able to send out waves of sand and crush hunters with its body weight. It also sported an enormous, if I'm reading this right, cannon on the back of its turtle-like shell
What?
that was able to fire sand and rock in huge chunks to harm the hunters. Most notable was the roar it used when going into rage mode, as it could quite easily one-shot hunters who weren't prepared. Both the hard
Well, weren't prepared. So I'm assuming it's just very damaging. I was about to say I really like the design. Actually, the spikes work for it because it's an alligator, like a snapping turtle look. But what do you mean it has a cannon?
hardcore and supremacy species of this monster were introduced in Forward 5, which is rare to see from a brand new edition. The hardcore variation is fairly similar, with the horns having more of an orange tinge in comparison to the white of the normal version, and it has a stronger roar requiring super high grade earplugs. Supremacy Odie, while more powerful, didn't offer much in terms of changes to the actual battle. Now for the remaining hardcore monsters, we have hardcore Beru Kirurosu and Gogomoa.
The hardcore spike enhancements do not play nicely with this one to my aesthetic senses. We're getting into the frontier, spikes everywhere, absurd powers for no reason. This is what I was concerned about.
Has two large spikes coming out of each talon now, and has the ability to use moves normally that used to only be available while it was in its rage state. Past SR 100, Hardcore Beru can even fly into the sky and shoot a large red beam downward before having it travel horizontally across the map. The beam is incredibly large and even bigger than the monster itself. Hardcore Gogomoa now has red claws as well as the ability to throw.
Okay, the previous hardcore sounds again little ridiculous. How is this even somewhat feasible for creature to do? But let's see if the spider monkey feels more reasonable.
Itself. Hardcore Gogomoa now has red claws as well as the ability to throw coconuts into trees, which will explode on contact, acting as a grenade with the shrapnel spreading outward. If hit, this attack can cause both poison and sleep status ailments. It's more agile and can pull branches down from the trees using its webbing, which can hit hunters, and it has the ability to swing circularly around the map. Onto the remaining.
None of that is even that ridiculous. I mean, also going back to what we were saying a little while ago, longer for me, less for you, about things being readapted from Frontier. That almost sounds like Bishatten and its different fruits that do different effects. Plus, exploding nuts are nothing new to Monster Hunter. That sounded a little wrong. You know what I mean? Like Blast Nut, or Scatter Nuts. But that one is a lot more reasonable than the one that came before. Also, I think my tracking is really not working now. Lighting changes.
And incredibly powerful supremacy species. We have a pairing known as Aruganosu and Goruganosu. You can think of these as silver and gold Lavasioths. Aru is an ice elemental monster that has the ability to inflict paralysis, while Goru is a thunder element monster and can inflict sleep. You'll fight these Piscean wyverns together, but killing them may be tricky. Once one is on its last HP, it will simply flop around like a fish out of water, and you won't be able to finish it off until you get the partner down to the same state.
Why? Okay, I was already, just from the little teaser look we had with these, not looking forward to them, but why can you only kill it when the partner is dead? That is also down. That does not make sense. If it's down to its last thing, it has a mandatory flops around it, and then you kill it, that's fine. They just wanted to make sure you look at the flop animation more. Weird choice, but okay, but why do they have a life link? We're getting into it's just magic now. That's just magic now. If this was a more magic setting, again, not necessarily an issue, but this is Monster Hunter, at least ostensibly. Why are they life linked?
too long, and the disabled fish will begin to heal the other, so you need to be efficient in hunting these two. On top of all of this, they also had the ability to perform team attacks, which could be devastating to an unwary hunter. Supremacy Dora-Gyorosu is one of the more difficult monsters to receive the Supremacy treatment, as if simply being this variation of monster wasn't bad enough. Aside from various physical changes,
yeah, the Supremacy changes don't play nice with his design either. But let's see if they made him as absurd as the previous.
it pulls moves and abilities from other forms of Dora-Gyorosu and Beru-Gyorosu, and new attacks entirely, such as lifting and launching chunks of the ground into the air before large projectiles begin to fall within a wide area. The coolest thing about it is what happens upon death. Similar to Phantom Dora, the Supremacy version will revive after death, starting with a large explosion of dragon element. It then enters a permanent rage state and is buffed with increased speed, attack range, and new abilities, making it incredibly deadly. Now, Supremacy...
Okay, again, I like the... It has a 1 instance return from life in a final rage mode. That's cool. And it doesn't seem to have been amped as ridiculously. I don't know, maybe. But the design changes for it do not work. At least not in my opinion.
Puria was another fearsome addition. Its appearance has actually been greatly changed, with its body covered in blood, mainly on its claws and fangs. This monster can do almost anything. On top of being stronger and incredibly fast, it could also mix its vomit into its projectiles to cause KO and soiled at the same time, or coat itself, allowing it to inflict poison, paralysis, or sleep when colliding with a hunter. It has many new attacks that I won't go over here, but it was truly ferocious.
Okay, if the various statuses of what it can inflict on the hunter with its bile is dependent on what it eats, that's fine and that makes sense and is neat. And I hope it's the case that way, because otherwise we get into the why does it have this ability issue again. That said, I do like the design change. It makes it feel a lot more menacing.
Finally, we have Supremacy Teostra, who was also considered to be one of the more grueling hunts in the game at the time, truly considered an irredeemable bastard among the Frontier community for how ludicrously powerful it was. Similar to hardcore...
I mean, it is an Elder Dragon, and Elder Dragons are supposed to be extremely powerful, and Elder Dragons are where we can at least go a little bit into the, okay, well, how does that work? It's basically magic. You still got to give it that hint, that decent chunklet of believability, but not as much as regular monsters.
For Teostra, it has better control over the fire element and therefore has more powerful, faster, wider, and controlled abilities. It basically functioned in 2 modes, one where it acted like your typical hardcore Teostra and an enhanced form. In this form, it'll create a giant flame tornado, jump into it, and let out a horrible screech, coming out looking like a Californian gender reveal party. Again, it has multiple new moves, and I wouldn't want to simply list them all here, but hopefully this footage gives you a good idea of what this horrible experience might have felt like.
Yeah, it is a little more than a little ridiculous with the takes up most of the map fire explosions. So yeah, we're getting into the Frontier ridiculousness a bit, but I'm more tolerant of it for Elder Dragons than I am regular monsters.
So, are you terrified yet? Supremacy was only a taste of what began to show up in G, and maybe the start of one of the big reasons Western fans don't like the idea of playing Frontier.
Yeah. I don't know about terrified, but like you said, starting to get a little hesitant about wanting to play it.
Incredibly difficult fights, and a hyper reliance on the evasion skill was beginning to form around these design choices. It'll be interesting to see how this evolved within G and Z moving forward, but unfortunately, that's all I have for you today. The next part of this history series will cover the G1 to G5 updates and what they brought to the table. I'd like to give a big shout out and thanks to Sarah Symmetry for helping out with the script and research, as well as appearing in the video itself. Again, all of their links can be found below, so be sure to check their content out. Additionally, thanks to Fist from Fist.moe and all of the community members for helping clarify certain aspects of the game. Thanks to Ascalon for helping explain features about specific updates, and thanks to Kapu and Eric for providing the in-game footage. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, consider supporting the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Again, it only takes a couple of seconds and helps support me in my goal of creating this content for you all. I try to respond to every comment I can, so if you want to hear from me, be sure to let me know. Thanks so much, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.
Honestly, I couldn't do a better shield the channel plug than that, so but for me as well. That said, again, I will link this playlist in my description of this video, so go check it out and do that for him as well. We are starting to get into the frontier ridiculousness that I was dreading, like I'm saying. But there were a couple things that were still pretty cool that I would like to see come to the main line. Spider Monkey Brute Wyvern, not Brute Wyvern, Spider Monkey Fanged Beast. Really cool. I like that. But that will be all for today because my tracking is starting to wig out and I gotta be up early tomorrow. So subscribe to me, subscribe to him if you go check out his stuff. And see you next time, whenever that be. Goodbye. What are you still doing here? The video's over. There might be some for you up there or some for you over there, but there's nothing left here, so hit the YouTube buttons and move on.